the most prominent of which are red blood cells, as pictured here. Coming into view now, we see a monocyte. Monocytes are phagocytic cells which eventually become macrophages. Macrophages play an important role in tissue-mediated immune responses. We are now approaching a neutrophil. Neutrophils are cells of the innate immune system, which are responsible for inflammation. Differentiation of white blood cells is very difficult and cannot be done visually without close microscopic examination. Fortunately, the Virtual Explorer is equipped with a dye torpedo system, which allows us to dye the surfaces of white blood cells and identify them based on the proteins on their surfaces. Here, as you can see, we have a helper T cell based on the dyes which bonded to the CD4 and T cell receptors on its surface. At the top of our view screen, we see a platelet. Although not cells themselves, platelets play key roles in blood clotting. We are now approaching a white blood cell. The Virtual Explorer can further reduce its size in order to more closely examine the surface of this cell. We are now cruising the surface of a B cell at 1,000,000:1 magnification. Bound to the surface of this cell, we see antibodies and other proteins. In front of the ship, we see IgM, one of the characteristic surface proteins of a naive B cell. Also present is IgD, which is only found as a surface-bound protein. Also present on the surface is MHC class II, which presents antigen to helper T cells. Looking further, we also see MHC class I, which presents antigen to killer T cells. While we were on the surface of the B cell, this B cell has been moving through the body, and, upon re-emerging, we find ourselves in a lymph vessel. Looking ahead, let's find a killer T cell, and take a look at its surface.
The workaholic.
Using the dye torpedo system, we have positively identified a killer T cell on the third try. Let's approach and examine its surface. Upon approach to the killer T cell surface, we activate the Virtual Explorer's rearview mirror, which aids us in navigation. Up ahead, we see T cell receptors, which bond to antigen presented in MHC class I. T cell receptors are found on the surfaces of all T cells. Looking further, we also see CD8, which is a characteristic molecule of killer T cells. Also, on the surface of the killer T cell, we find MHC class I, a cellular footprint, which is found on the surface of all nucleated cells. We have emerged from the surface of the killer T cell and find ourselves once again in the lymph vessel. Using our dye torpedo system, we now identify a helper T cell and approach to make a surface pass. On approach to the surface of this helper T cell, we see the characteristic T cell receptors, also seen on the surface of the killer T cell. Looking further, we see MHC class I, our cellular footprint, found on the surface of all nucleated cells. Continuing our examination, we further encounter a CD4 molecule, characteristic of helper T cells, which we wish to photograph and store in the Virtual Explorer's database for further study. We have emerged from the surface of the helper T cell and now must prepare for immediate extraction from the body, having successfully accomplished our mission.
eject sequence initiated.